The impact came hard. Lieutenant Thomas Fraser's P-51B Mustang, QPG, serial number 4324825, nicknamed Jerry, plowed through the Norman field with enough force to tear furrows in the earth and crumple the propeller blades into twisted metal. The Packard Merlin engine, already trailing smoke from combat damage sustained during the chaos above the invasion beaches, finally gave out completely as the aircraft slid to a shuddering halt. Fraser survived, dazed but conscious, blood running from a gash above his eye. Within minutes, German soldiers surrounded the wreckage, rifles raised, shouting commands in a language he barely understood. He was pulled from the cockpit, searched, and led away under guard. His war was over, but for the aircraft he left behind, a different kind of mission was just beginning. The German recovery team arrived within hours, a specialized Berge Battalion salvage unit, trained to assess, secure, and transport crashed Allied aircraft before advancing forces could reclaim them. These men moved with practiced efficiency, circling the downed Mustang with the focused intensity of engineers, examining a puzzle they were determined to solve. Engine damage, one mechanic noted, kneeling beside the cowling. Substantial, but repairable. Fuselage? Another asked, running gloved hands along the aluminum skin. Intact. Some buckling near the tail section, but the primary structure is sound. The salvage team leader, a Feldwebel with grease-stained hands and sharp eyes, crouched beside the wing, examining the unusual laminar flow airfoil shape that had become the Mustang's signature feature. He had recovered dozens of Allied fighters over the past 2 years, Spitfires, Thunderbolts, Hurricanes, even the occasional twin-engine Lightning. But this was different. "This one can fly again," he said quietly, almost reverently. Within days, the Mustang was carefully dismantled, loaded onto a specialized flatbed transport, and sent eastward under armed guard. The destination, Rechlin, the Luftwaffe's premier testing and evaluation facility northwest of Berlin. For the German High Command, this capture represented something far more valuable than scrap metal or propaganda photographs. Since early 1944, intelligence reports from Luftwaffe pilots had grown increasingly alarming and increasingly unbelievable. American fighters were appearing over Berlin. Pilots reported Mustangs escorting bomber formations 850 miles from English bases, engaging in prolonged combat and still having enough fuel to return home. Luftwaffe intelligence analysts dismissed these claims as exaggerations, combat stress, or outright fabrications. A single-engine fighter with that kind of range? Impossible. Before we continue, click that subscribe button, like this video, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It brings me great joy knowing that these war stories and lessons get to people all over the world. Your support helps us bring more thrilling war stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's get back to the story. American engineering couldn't produce such a machine, but now, lying disassembled in a Rechlin hangar, was proof that demanded investigation. German engineers and test pilots gathered around the wreckage with expressions mixing professional curiosity and deep skepticism. They had heard the combat reports, they had read the intelligence summaries, and they had been told, repeatedly, through official channels and propaganda broadcasts, that American aircraft were crude, mass-produced machines, adequate in number, but inferior in quality to German designs, refined through years of engineering excellence. The Mustang lying before them would soon prove otherwise, and in doing so, it would shatter not just assumptions, but confidence itself. The restoration process was about to begin, and with it, a revelation that would ripple through every Luftwaffe fighter base in the Reich. Rechlin Testing Center sprawled across the flat Mecklenburg landscape like a small industrial city. Hangars, workshops, runways, test ranges, and administrative buildings forming the nerve center of Luftwaffe aircraft evaluation. Here, Germany's newest fighter designs underwent rigorous testing before entering production. Here, captured enemy aircraft were dissected, analyzed, and, when possible, returned to flying condition. Fraser's Mustang arrived in pieces. The disassembled components were carefully unloaded and transported to Hangar 7, where a team of experienced technicians awaited. These men had rebuilt British Spitfires, American P-47 Thunderbolts, even Soviet Yak fighters. They possessed an unusual skill set, the ability to reverse engineer complex aircraft systems without manuals, specifications, or factory-authorized parts. Oberingenieur Müller, the lead technician, walked slowly around the disassembled Mustang, clipboard in hand, making notes. The challenge before him was considerable. Unlike German aircraft, for which replacement parts could be requisitioned through normal supply channels, this American fighter required improvisation, adaptation, and resourcefulness. "We'll need components from other wrecks," Müller announced to his team. "Compile an inventory of every P-51 we've recovered across all theaters. I want locations, condition assessments, and available parts." Within days, reports arrived from salvage depots across occupied Europe. 3 P-51s recovered in France, 2 damaged for complete restoration, but containing usable components. 2 more in Italy, 1 in Holland, burned beyond salvage, except for control surface assemblies. The cannibalization process began. A replacement propeller arrived from a wreck recovered near Caen. 3 blades, Hamilton standard manufacture, still within acceptable tolerances despite crash damage. Engine components came from multiple sources: supercharger assemblies from one aircraft, fuel pumps from another, exhaust manifolds from a third. Technicians meticulously matched serial numbers, measured clearances, and verified compatibility. The Packard 516-53 Merlin engine presented the greatest challenge. The sophisticated 2-stage, 2-speed supercharger system required precise calibration and careful assembly. Müller's team worked methodically, consulting what limited intelligence documentation existed, comparing components against intact assemblies, and testing each system before integration. Hydraulic lines were fabricated from available materials. Fuel tanks underwent pressure testing and sealing. Control cables were replaced where wear or damage raised concerns. The electrical system, surprisingly sophisticated for what propaganda had portrayed as a crude American design, required careful troubleshooting and repair. After 3 weeks of intensive work, the Mustang sat complete in the hangar, structurally sound and mechanically functional. But it still looked American. The transformation came next. Following standard Luftwaffe protocols for captured aircraft, the Mustang's original olive drab and neutral gray camouflage disappeared beneath new paint. The fuselage received German markings, T9+HK, in bold black letters. The tail section and undersides were finished in bright RLM's 04 yellow, Gelb, the instantly recognizable identification color that would prevent German pilots from mistaking this aircraft for an enemy during flight operations. The propeller spinner received yellow paint. A red band adorned the nose cowling just aft of the spinner. The transformation was complete. What had been Lieutenant Fraser's American fighter, QPG, nicknamed Jerry, now bore the identity of a Luftwaffe evaluation aircraft, ready for testing. On a cold morning in late June 1944, Müller signed the final airworthiness certification. "She's ready," he told the test pilots gathering near the hangar. "Engine runs smooth, controls are responsive, all systems check normal." The senior test pilot, Major Klaus Hendel, studied the yellow-painted Mustang with an expression mixing professional interest and ingrained skepticism. "Let's see what the Americans have actually built," he said quietly. Within hours, the Merlin engine would roar to life, and comfortable assumptions would begin collapsing. The German test pilots gathering around the yellow-painted Mustang carried with them years of carefully cultivated beliefs. Assumptions reinforced through official channels, propaganda broadcasts, and the institutional confidence of a military force that had dominated European skies for the first 3 years of the war. American aircraft, they had been told repeatedly, were crude machines, mass-produced, unsophisticated, built for quantity rather than quality. The prevailing doctrine, disseminated through Luftwaffe training programs and intelligence briefings, held that American engineering philosophy prioritized manufacturing simplicity over performance refinement. American factories could produce vast numbers of aircraft, yes, but these machines lacked the precision engineering, the aerodynamic sophistication, the sheer craftsmanship that characterized German designs, like the Messerschmitt Bf 109 or the Focke-Wulf FW 190. Major Hendel himself had internalized this view. He had flown combat missions over France, the Mediterranean, and the Eastern Front. He had engaged American fighters in combat. And while he respected their numbers and the courage of their pilots, he remained convinced of German technical superiority. "They build adequate aircraft," he had once told younger pilots during a training briefing. But adequate is not excellent, and in aerial combat, excellence wins. The intelligence reports about Mustang range particularly strained credibility. Pilots returning from missions over Germany reported seeing American fighters escorting bomber formations to Berlin, 850 miles from bases in England. They described prolonged combat engagements, aggressive pursuit of fleeing German fighters, and Mustangs that still possessed enough fuel to return across the Channel. Luftwaffe intelligence analysts examined these reports with deep skepticism. The numbers didn't make sense. A single-engine fighter carrying enough fuel to fly 1,100 miles round trip while maintaining combat capability. Impossible. The fuel load alone would make such an aircraft too heavy to maneuver effectively. The range claims had to be exaggerations, combat stress, navigation errors, or deliberate Allied disinformation designed to demoralize German pilots. Propaganda, one intelligence officer had written dismissively across a report. "No single-engine fighter possesses such range. Our pilots are mistaking P-47s or twin-engine P-38s for Mustangs in the heat of combat." The explanation satisfied command. It preserved the comfortable narrative that American engineering remained fundamentally inferior. German fighter designs, meanwhile, represented the pinnacle of aeronautical achievement, or so the institutional belief held. The Bf 109, continuously refined since 1935, embodied German engineering philosophy. Lightweight, powerful, optimized for climb rate and high-altitude performance. The FW 190, introduced in 1941, had shocked Allied pilots with its speed, firepower, and roll rate. These were sophisticated machines, built by engineers who understood the physics of flight, who calculated every aerodynamic surface, who pursued performance through meticulous design rather than brute force manufacturing. Surely American factories, geared toward mass production and industrial efficiency, could not match this level of refinement. Surely. As Major Hendel walked toward the captured Mustang, sitting on the Rechlin tarmac, these assumptions formed the lens through which he would evaluate what he was about to experience. He expected to find an adequate aircraft, well built, certainly, and capable enough to explain why American bomber losses had decreased. but he expected confirmation of German superiority. He expected to discover vulnerabilities. He expected to find the crude simplicity that propaganda had promised. He climbed into the cockpit, anticipating vindication. What he found instead would haunt him for the rest of his life. Major Klaus Hendel settled into the Mustang's cockpit with the practiced movements of a pilot who had flown dozens of aircraft types. He adjusted the seat, tested the rudder pedals, examined the instrument panel layout. The cockpit was spacious, surprisingly so. More room than a Bf-109, better visibility than an FW-190. Controls fell naturally to hand. The instrument arrangement seemed logical, almost intuitive. He pushed the thought aside. Ergonomics were secondary to performance. Hendel ran through the pre-flight checklist, translated hastily from captured American technical documents, and signaled the ground crew. The Packard Merlin coughed once, then roared to life with a deep, powerful growl that resonated through the airframe. Throttle forward. The Mustang accelerated smoothly down the Rechlin runway. At 100 mm, Hendel eased back on the stick. The aircraft lifted with an eagerness that surprised him. The initial climb revealed the first crack in German assumptions. Hendel advanced the throttle to climb power and watched the altimeter unwind with shocking rapidity. The Mustang ascended at a rate that exceeded his Bf-109 experience. Steeper, faster, with the two-stage Merlin supercharger maintaining power at altitudes where German single-stage engines began gasping for air. At 20,000 feet, where he expected performance to degrade noticeably, the Mustang still climbed effortlessly. At 25,000 feet, the controls remained crisp and responsive. At 30,000 feet, the aircraft still had power in reserve. Hendel leveled off, disturbed by what he was experiencing. This was not supposed to be possible. Not from a mass-produced American fighter. He initiated a high-speed dive, pushing the nose down and advancing the throttle to full power. The Mustang accelerated cleanly, without the buffeting or control stiffening that characterized German fighters at high speed. The airspeed indicator climbed past 400 mm, then 420, then 440. The aircraft remained stable, controllable, precise. Hendel pulled back firmly on the stick, initiating a high G pullout. The Mustang responded instantly, no mushing, no wallowing, just clean, obedient response to control inputs. He rolled left, then right, testing aileron authority at speed. The roll rate was excellent. Better than excellent. It was flawless. For the next 40 minutes, Hendel put the Mustang through every evaluation protocol he knew. Steep turns at various speeds and altitudes, accelerated stalls, combat maneuvers, high-altitude performance runs, low-altitude handling checks, control response tests across the entire flight envelope. With each maneuver, his professional detachment eroded. The aircraft climbed like nothing he had flown. It dove without limit. It turned with precision. The controls harmonized perfectly. Ailerons, elevator, and rudder working together with a balance that eliminated the awkward coordination required in German fighters. And the range, the fuel gauges barely moved despite aggressive maneuvering. If these readings were accurate, the intelligence reports about Berlin escorts weren't propaganda at all. They were conservative estimates. Hendel landed 45 minutes after takeoff, taxied to the evaluation hangar, and shut down the engine. Ground crews rushed forward, expecting the usual post-flight assessment. Performance notes, handling characteristics, identified weaknesses. Hendel climbed from the cockpit slowly, removed his leather helmet, and stood silent for a long moment. Oberingenieur Müller approached with clipboard ready. "Major, your assessment?" Hendel chose his words carefully, aware that his report would reach high command. "The handling is exceptional," he said quietly. "Better than anything we have. The climb rate is superior. High-altitude performance is unmatched. Control harmony is—" He paused, searching for adequate terminology. "Perfect. I found no weaknesses." Müller stopped writing. "No weaknesses?" "None." Hendel's voice carried a weight that silenced the ground crews. "This aircraft is better than our best fighters, significantly better." The silence stretched. Someone finally whispered what everyone was thinking. "Then how do we fight it?" Hendel had no answer. Following Major Hendel's disturbing initial assessment, Rechlin engineers launched a comprehensive technical evaluation. Systematic measurements, instrumented test flights, and detailed analysis designed to quantify exactly what American designers had achieved. The results arrived as a series of hammer blows to German confidence. Speed. Instrumented runs at various altitudes confirmed maximum velocities exceeding 440 millibecquerels, faster than the Bf-109G, faster than the FW-190A, competitive with Germany's latest models still in development. But raw speed told only part of the story. The Mustang achieved these velocities while carrying substantially more fuel than German fighters, meaning it maintained performance capabilities across mission profiles that would leave Luftwaffe aircraft on the ground, refueling. Climb rate. Time to altitude measurements revealed performance that shocked even experienced engineers. The Mustang reached 20,000 feet in under 7 minutes. German fighters required 9 to 10 minutes for the same climb. At combat altitudes where bomber interceptions occurred, the American fighter held decisive advantage. It could reach attacking positions faster, maintain energy in combat, and climb away from trouble with authority no German single-engine fighter could match. High-altitude performance. The two-stage Merlin supercharger's sophistication became brutally apparent above 25,000 feet, where German fighters with single-stage superchargers experienced significant power loss. The Mustang maintained robust performance to 30,000 feet and beyond. Engineers calculated that at typical bomber escort altitudes, the P-51 held a 15–20% power advantage over Luftwaffe interceptors. The implications were devastating. American fighters could dictate engagement altitude, control combat geometry, and fight on their terms. The laminar flow wing design represented engineering that German aerodynamicists had theorized but never successfully implemented in production aircraft. Engineers examined the wing profile with instruments and careful measurements, tracing the precise airfoil shape that reduced drag by maintaining smooth airflow farther aft along the chord. Wind tunnel theory made real. The drag reduction, approximately 15% compared to conventional wings, translated directly into range and speed advantages. "This is not crude engineering," one aerodynamicist wrote in his evaluation report. "This is sophisticated aerodynamic design, executed with precision manufacturing. We have underestimated American capabilities." Cockpit ergonomics analysis revealed thoughtful attention to pilot effectiveness. Controls positioned for minimum workload. Instruments grouped logically by function. Excellent visibility in most directions. Comfortable seating that reduced fatigue during long missions. Germans pilots accustomed to cramped Bf-109 cockpits found the spacious Mustang environment almost luxurious, but luxury served tactical purpose. Reduced pilot fatigue meant better combat performance over extended missions. The canopy design, though the Razorback limited rearward visibility compared to later bubble canopy variants, still offered superior situational awareness compared to heavily framed German designs. But the fuel economy measurements proved most disturbing. Engineers calculated range figures and recalculated them, unable to believe initial results. With internal fuel only, the Mustang could fly approximately 950 miles. With external drop tanks, standard equipment for escort missions, combat radius extended to 850 miles or more. Berlin lay 580 miles from English bases. The mathematics were inescapable. American fighters could escort bombers to any target in Germany, fight extended engagements, and return home with fuel reserves. The intelligence reports dismissed as propaganda were, if anything, understating Mustang capabilities. Oberingenieur Müller compiled the evaluation data into a comprehensive technical report. Before submitting it to High Command, he read through the findings one final time. Every category, American advantage. Every measurement, German disadvantage. Every assumption, shattered. He added a final paragraph summarizing the strategic implications. This aircraft explains the dramatic reduction in American bomber losses observed since early 1944. The P-51 provides effective escort across all mission profiles to maximum strategic depth. Luftwaffe interceptor forces can no longer attack bomber formations with impunity. Air superiority over the Reich is no longer achievable with current fighter designs. The report went forward. The truth could no longer be denied. The yellow-painted Mustang bearing the code T9 Plausch HK departed Rechlin in July 1944. Assigned to Hauptmann Theodor Rosarius's specialized evaluation unit, the Wanderzirkus Rosarius, where it would begin a journey across Luftwaffe bases throughout Germany and occupied territories. The mission: allow frontline pilots to see firsthand what they were fighting. The result: systematic demolition of German morale. The first demonstration took place at Jüterbog Airfield, south of Berlin, where JG-3, Jagdgeschwader 3, was recuperating after heavy losses during recent bomber escort battles. Pilots gathered on the flight line as the captured Mustang taxied into position, its bright yellow markings unmistakable, its Merlin engine producing that distinctive American growl they had learned to fear in combat. Major Hendel, now the primary demonstration pilot, advanced the throttle smoothly. The Mustang accelerated down the runway with startling rapidity, noticeably faster than the Bf-109s and FW-190s parked nearby. Rotation, climb. Within seconds, the aircraft was at 1,000 feet and still ascending aggressively. Hendel leveled off at 3,000 feet and began the demonstration sequence. First, acceleration runs. The Mustang flashed past the assembled pilots at low altitude, engine at combat power, the Merlin's supercharger producing a rising scream. The speed was visibly greater than German fighters could achieve in level flight at that altitude. Not marginally faster, but dramatically so. "Gott im Himmel," someone muttered. "Look at it go." Second, roll demonstrations. Hendel initiated a series of aileron rolls, crisp, precise, beautifully controlled. The Mustang rotated around its longitudinal axis with a speed and cleanliness that made German fighters look sluggish by comparison. Roll left, roll right, continuous rolls, each perfectly executed with no altitude loss, no coordination problems, just pure, obedient response. Third, high G maneuvers. The Mustang entered a steep climbing turn, tightening the radius until it seemed impossible the aircraft could maintain the turn without stalling. But the laminar flow wing held clean airflow, the Merlin maintained power, and the fighter carved graceful arcs through the sky with G-forces that would have had German fighters shuddering on the edge of control loss. One young pilot, recently transferred from training command, watched with growing horror. "We're supposed to fight that?" After 30 minutes of demonstration flying, Hendel brought the Mustang in for landing. A smooth, controlled approach that showcased the aircraft's docile, low-speed handling characteristics. Pilots swarmed the aircraft once it shut down. They examined the laminar flow wing profile. They peered into the spacious cockpit. They ran hands along control surfaces, noting the precision manufacturing and quality construction. They studied the fuel tank arrangement, calculating range, confronting the reality they had denied. "How do we beat it?" asked an Oberleutnant, with 8 kills and a Knight's Cross. Hendel, climbing from the cockpit, met his eyes directly. "You don't. Not in a turning fight. Not in a dive. Not in sustained combat. Your only chance is surprise, attack from above with altitude advantage, make one pass, and disengage before it turns on you. And if it sees us first, then you run, and you pray it doesn't follow." The Wanderzirkus continued its tour: Verneuken, Jüterbog, Wiesbaden-Erbenheim, airfields across the Reich. At each base the reaction repeated: initial curiosity, growing amazement, final demoralization. Pilots who had fought Mustangs in combat watched the demonstrations and recognized maneuvers they had seen. The sudden acceleration that left German fighters behind, the effortless high-altitude performance, the precision rolls that set up killing shots. After the Verneuken demonstration, a veteran pilot with 17 victories stood smoking beside his FW-190, watching the yellow Mustang taxi past. "We're fighting a machine we cannot match," he said quietly to his wingman. "They can go where we cannot follow. They can fight longer than we can fuel. They choose every engagement." Word spread through Luftwaffe fighter units like contagion. The whispers carried the same message, base after base, pilot after pilot. "This aircraft is unbeatable." And everyone knew what that meant. Observation was one thing. Direct experience was another entirely. At Verneuken Airfield in August 1944, Rosarius arranged what would become the most psychologically devastating phase of the evaluation program. Mock combat exercises, pitting experienced Luftwaffe pilots against the captured Mustang in controlled dogfighting scenarios. The rules were simple: engage at altitude, fight until one pilot achieved firing position, disengage, repeat. No actual weapons, of course, just combat geometry, angles, energy management, and pilot skill. Oberleutnant Werner Hoffmann volunteered first. 23 combat victories, Knight's Cross recipient, Bf 109 ace, with extensive experience against American fighters. He climbed into his familiar Gustav, the Bf 109 G6, confident that skill and experience would compensate for any aircraft performance differences. Major Hendel climbed into the yellow Mustang. Both aircraft lifted off from parallel runways, climbing to 15,000 feet, where the engagement would begin. First engagement. Hoffmann initiated with an advantage, starting 2,000 feet above the Mustang with superior position. He rolled inverted and pulled through into a diving attack, building speed. Setting up the classic bounce, strike fast from above, use gravity and surprise, disengage before the enemy can counter. The Mustang saw him coming. As Hoffmann committed to his dive, the P-51 broke hard left, rolling inverted and pulling into a climbing turn that seemed to defy physics. Hoffmann tried to follow, pulling his stick back hard, but the 109's wings protested, control surfaces buffeting as the aircraft approached stall. The Mustang climbed away effortlessly, reversed, and was suddenly on Hoffmann's tail. "Kill," Hendel radioed calmly. "Gun's solution achieved." Time elapsed. 45 seconds. Second engagement. They reset to neutral positions, co-altitude, co-energy, nose-to-nose. Classic turning fight. Hoffmann banked hard into his turn, throttle to the firewall, using every trick he knew to tighten his turn radius without bleeding too much energy. The Bf 109 turned well. Not as well as lighter, more nimble fighters, but respectably. The Mustang simply turned inside him. Not struggling, not forcing, just turning tighter. The laminar flow wing maintained lift efficiency through the turn, the powerful Merlin maintained energy, and the harmonized controls allowed Hendel to position the aircraft exactly where he wanted it. Within 2 complete turns, the Mustang had guns positioned. "Kill," Hendel radioed again. Hoffman's voice came back tight with frustration. Again. 3rd engagement. Hoffman tried vertical maneuvers, the climb and dive tactics that often worked against American pilots, less experienced in energy fighting. He pulled into a steep climb, hoping to force the Mustang to follow and lose energy in the vertical. The P-51 followed, and kept following, and kept climbing. At 20,000 feet, where Hoffman's supercharger began losing efficiency and his climb rate deteriorated, the Mustang still had power. It climbed past him, reversed at the top, and dove back down with speed advantage. "Kill," Hendel called for the 3rd time. 4th engagement. Desperation now. Hoffman tried the only tactic left: full power dive, maximum speed, attempt to escape through sheer velocity and extend beyond pursuit range. The Mustang followed and gained. The P-51's clean aerodynamics and powerful engine gave it superior dive performance. Hoffman watched his mirror with growing alarm as the yellow fighter closed distance effortlessly, sitting perfectly positioned at his 6 o'clock. "Kill." Hoffman landed shaken. Other pilots took their turns. FW-190 pilots, experienced 109 aces, even an Me-262 jet pilot, curious about piston engine handling. The results never changed. The Mustang controlled every engagement. It dictated altitude, dictated range, dictated tactics. German pilots couldn't escape it, couldn't outmaneuver it, couldn't climb or dive to safety. After the exercise ended, pilots gathered quietly in the ready room. One of them finally verbalized what everyone was thinking. "In combat, that aircraft decides if we live or die. If it wants to engage, we fight on its terms. If it wants to kill us, we die. We have no counter." The silence that followed was absolute. They had just learned what helplessness felt like. The captured Mustang had revealed a tactical truth. But tactical truths accumulate into strategic reality, and by late summer 1944, that reality was crushing the Luftwaffe beneath weight it could no longer bear. The numbers told a story of systematic collapse. Bomber loss rates. In 1943, American bombers flying deep penetration raids into Germany suffered catastrophic losses, sometimes 10%, 15%, even 20% of attacking formations destroyed. Entire bomber groups were decimated. The 8th Air Force bled aircraft faster than factories could replace them. Then, in early 1944, something changed. Mustang groups began escorting bombers to maximum range: Berlin, Munich, Schweinfurt, Regensburg. The fighter escorts that Luftwaffe intelligence had dismissed as propaganda appeared over German cities in overwhelming numbers. Bomber loss rates collapsed. By summer 1944, loss rates on escorted missions averaged below 2%. Some raids lost no aircraft to fighters at all. The strategic bombing campaign that Germany had hoped to strangle through attrition suddenly became sustainable and unstoppable. German pilots watching the captured Mustang's demonstrations understood why. No Luftwaffe fighter could break through the escort screen. The P-51's controlled engagement altitude, dictated combat geometry, and hunted German interceptors with range and performance advantages that made bomber attacks suicidal. German pilot casualties. The brutal mathematics worked in reverse for Luftwaffe fighter units. Pilot losses, killed, wounded, missing, accelerated throughout 1944. Experienced aces died in numbers that training commands could not replace. Replacement pilots arrived at frontline units with minimal hours, inadequate gunnery training, and no real chance of survival against veteran American fighter pilots flying superior aircraft. Average combat life expectancy for new German fighter pilots dropped below 20 missions. The Luftwaffe was bleeding out. Pilots examining the captured Mustang understood the mechanism of their destruction. They were flying aircraft that couldn't climb as fast, couldn't turn as tight, couldn't fight as long, and couldn't escape when the tactical situation deteriorated. Every combat engagement became asymmetric warfare, skilled pilots fighting with disadvantaged tools against an opponent with every advantage, except desperation. High-altitude dominance. Above 25,000 feet, where American heavy bombers cruised and where combat most often occurred, Mustangs owned the sky. German fighters struggled at those altitudes, their single-stage superchargers gasping, their climb rates deteriorating, their pilots laboring in thin air against opponents whose two-stage Merlins delivered full power and whose pressurized cockpits provided comfort and clarity. The strategic implications were absolute. Germany could not defend its airspace at the altitudes where defense mattered most. Fuel plant destruction. Perhaps most devastating, Mustang-escorted bombers systematically destroyed Germany's synthetic fuel production capacity. Luna, Pulitz, Brooks, Zeitz. One by one, the plants that converted coal into aviation fuel received concentrated bombing attacks that German fighters could not prevent. Fuel production collapsed from 180,000 tons monthly in March 1944 to barely 20,000 tons by September. Without fuel, the Luftwaffe couldn't train replacement pilots. Without fuel, fighters sat grounded while bombers overhead destroyed cities. Without fuel, tactical excellence became strategically irrelevant. German pilots understood the vicious circle. Mustangs protected bombers that destroyed fuel plants that grounded German fighters that could no longer protect fuel plants. After the mock dogfight demonstrations ended at Verneuken, Major Hendel addressed assembled pilots in the briefing room. "The aircraft you just watched," he said quietly, "represents why we are losing the air war. Not because of pilot skill, ours remains excellent. Not because of courage. No one questions German fighter pilots' bravery. But because American industry has produced a fighter we cannot match, in numbers we cannot counter, supported by fuel reserves we cannot attack." He paused, letting the words settle. "The war in the air is already lost. This," he gestured toward the window where the yellow Mustang sat on the ramp, "is simply proof." No one argued. While test pilots grappled with the Mustang's performance superiority, Rechlin engineers conducted detailed teardown analysis, disassembling components, measuring tolerances, examining manufacturing techniques, and documenting construction methods. What they discovered was perhaps more disturbing than the aircraft's flight characteristics. The Mustang represented industrial capability Germany could not hope to replicate. Manufacturing. Precision. Engineers measured component tolerances with precision gauges, expecting to find the crude workmanship that propaganda had promised. Instead, they found manufacturing quality that matched or exceeded German standards. Engine components showed precise machining. Structural fittings demonstrated consistent quality control. Surface finishes on aerodynamic components revealed careful attention to drag reduction. Even mass-produced parts, fasteners, brackets, fittings, displayed uniformity that indicated sophisticated factory processes and rigorous quality assurance. "This is not crude manufacturing," Oberingenieur Müller wrote in his analysis report. "This is precision mass production, something we have not achieved. The Americans have solved the problem of maintaining quality while maximizing output." German aircraft production, by contrast, still relied heavily on skilled craftsmen hand-fitting components, a process that ensured quality but limited production rates and created maintenance complications when parts from different production batches didn't interchange properly. Maintenance design. Philosophy. The teardown revealed another American advantage. The Mustang was designed for field maintenance by mechanics with average skill levels. Access panels opened easily, providing clear reach to critical systems. Engine changes could be accomplished in hours rather than days. Standardized fasteners and common tools eliminated the specialized equipment requirements that plagued German fighters. Fuel, hydraulic, and electrical systems were routed logically, making troubleshooting straightforward. The contrast with German designs was stark. The Bf-109's cramped engine compartment required specialized training and tools for even routine maintenance. The FW-190's tightly packaged radial engine installation created access nightmares. Both aircraft demanded skilled mechanics and extensive downtime for repairs. The Mustang's design philosophy assumed mechanics would work under field conditions with limited tools and imperfect facilities. German designs assumed factory-level expertise and equipment would be available. In sustained combat operations, this difference determined operational readiness rates, and operational readiness determined tactical effectiveness. Materials and construction. Engineers examined the airframe structure carefully, noting the extensive use of aluminum alloys that provided strength without excessive weight. The manufacturing techniques, primarily monocoque construction with stamped and formed components, allowed rapid production while maintaining structural integrity. German aircraft increasingly relied on strategic materials Germany no longer possessed in adequate quantities: chromium, nickel, molybdenum. Substitute materials and modified alloys worked, but compromised performance and complicated production. The Mustang used materials America had in abundance, manufactured with processes America had perfected, assembled in factories scaled for mass production. Production numbers. Intelligence reports provided the most devastating context. North American Aviation's plants in Inglewood, California, and Dallas, Texas, produced between 500 and 880 Mustangs monthly, depending on variant and production period. Peak monthly production exceeded 880 aircraft. Total P-51 production would eventually surpass 15,000 units. Germany's entire fighter production across all manufacturers, Messerschmitt, Focke-Wulf, Heinkel combined, struggled to exceed 1,000 fighters monthly, and those numbers included multiple types with limited parts commonality. The mathematics were brutal. America could replace Mustang losses faster than Germany could destroy them. America could equip new fighter groups faster than Germany could train replacement pilots. America could sustain a war of attrition that Germany had no possibility of winning. Müller compiled his findings into a sobering conclusion. The P-51 represents integrated industrial capability, design, engineering, manufacturing, logistics, optimized for sustained large-scale warfare. Germany's aircraft industry, despite considerable technical expertise, cannot compete with American production capacity, resource availability, and systematic approach to quality mass production. We are fighting an industrial war with artisan-level production methods. The outcome is mathematically predetermined. The report circulated through Luftwaffe High Command, where it joined growing stacks of evidence documenting inevitable defeat. Strategic reality, once denied, could no longer be ignored. The Mustang had proven it, one captured aircraft, revealing an insurmountable industrial gulf. By autumn 1944, the revelations from the captured Mustang merged with cascading operational crises that pushed the Luftwaffe toward systemic collapse. The knowledge that America had built an unbeatable fighter was devastating. But knowledge alone didn't destroy the Luftwaffe. Reality did. Fuel starvation. The synthetic fuel plants that Mustang escorted bombers had systematically destroyed throughout the summer, stopped producing. Storage depots emptied. Fuel allocations to fighter units shrank from inadequate to catastrophic. Squadrons that once flew multiple daily sorties now rationed fuel for a single mission per day, if that. Training flights ceased entirely. Replacement pilots arrived at operational units without adequate flight hours because training commands had no fuel to fly them. Experienced pilots sat in ready rooms, watching enemy bomber formations pass overhead. Their fighters grounded not from battle damage or maintenance issues, but from empty fuel tanks. The bitter irony was not lost on anyone. Germany possessed skilled pilots, capable aircraft, and tactical doctrine, but no fuel to employ any of it effectively. Mechanics drained fuel from damaged aircraft to keep a handful of fighters operational. Commanders argued bitterly over allocation priorities. Pilots volunteered for near-suicidal missions simply for the privilege of flying one more time. The Luftwaffe was being strangled by logistical reality. Green replacements. The veteran pilots who had survived 1943 and early 1944. The experienced aces who understood tactics, gunnery, and survival died in accelerating numbers throughout the summer. Their replacements arrived tragically unprepared. 18-year-old boys with barely 50 flight hours. Minimal gunnery training. No combat experience. Inadequate instrument instruction. They flew obsolescent aircraft against experienced Allied pilots in superior fighters, supported by overwhelming numbers. Average life expectancy, 5 combat missions. Some died on their first sortie, shot down before they understood what was happening. Others survived a few missions through sheer luck, then made the small mistake that combat always punishes. Hesitated a moment too long, misjudged an opponent's position, lost situational awareness in the chaos. The Mustangs showed no mercy to inexperience. Veteran German pilots watched their young wingmen die and could do nothing to prevent it. The tactical equation had become unsolvable. Poor training plus inadequate fuel plus inferior aircraft plus overwhelming opposition equaled inevitable death. Unit cohesion fractured. Morale collapsed. Pilots stopped believing survival was possible. Mustangs everywhere. The captured P-51 at Rechlin had revealed what one Mustang could do, but combat revealed what hundreds could accomplish. Mustang groups appeared over Germany in formations that blocked out sections of sky. 30, 40, 50 aircraft at once. They escorted bombers to any target. They strafed airfields, destroying German fighters on the ground. They hunted trains, trucks, and supply columns. They flew patrols over German territory, as if they owned the airspace. Because they did. German fighters that rose to intercept faced impossible odds. For every Luftwaffe aircraft that managed to reach bombers, 3 or 4 Mustangs waited, positioned perfectly, energy advantage secured, ready to convert numerical and performance superiority into kills. Radio frequencies filled with desperate calls. Mustangs at 6 o'clock. Brake left, I can't shake him. Bailing out. The psychological impact matched the tactical devastation. German pilots began scanning the sky, not with hunters' anticipation, but with prey's fear, knowing that enemy fighters could appear anywhere, attack from any angle, pursue beyond any escape attempt. A sense of inescapable doom settled over Luftwaffe fighter units like morning fog. Heavy, cold, suffocating. Pilots climbed into cockpits knowing they probably wouldn't return. Ground crews serviced aircraft, knowing the young pilots flying them were already dead. Commanders wrote reports knowing the truth no longer mattered. The war in the air was over. The Mustang, and everything it represented, had won. The yellow Mustang bearing the code T9 Plik made its final recorded flight in October 1944. After that, the historical record goes silent. No official documentation survives detailing the aircraft's ultimate fate. No photographs show its final disposition. No witness accounts describe its destruction. The P-51 that had shattered German confidence and forced the Luftwaffe to confront uncomfortable truths simply vanished. Most likely it was destroyed during the chaotic final months of 1944 as Allied forces advanced and the Reich contracted. Perhaps it was caught on the ground during a bombing raid on Rechlin. Perhaps it was deliberately destroyed to prevent recapture as American or Soviet forces approached. Perhaps it suffered a mechanical failure during a demonstration flight and crashed. Its wreckage hauled away and forgotten. The Wonder Zirkus Rosarius itself disbanded as fuel shortages, pilot losses, and the collapsing strategic situation made traveling demonstrations impossible. Rosarius's specialized unit, which had provided frontline pilots with invaluable tactical intelligence, became irrelevant as the Luftwaffe ran out of fuel, pilots, and time. Lieutenant Thomas Fraser's aircraft, serial number 4324825, which had survived a crash landing on D-Day and been meticulously rebuilt by German engineers, likely ended as scrap metal in some forgotten corner of a devastated airfield. But the aircraft's physical destruction didn't erase its impact. The German pilots who flew it fought against it and watched its demonstrations carried that knowledge for the rest of their lives. The engineers who measured its performance, analyzed its construction, and documented its superiority understood what it represented. Proof of American industrial and engineering capabilities that Germany could never match. The captured Mustang had served as a mirror, reflecting back an image the Luftwaffe did not want to see. Outclassed, outproduced, outfought. T9+HK disappeared, but the truth it revealed remained, permanent and inescapable. The air war was lost, and a yellow-painted American fighter had proven it beyond all doubt. Years after the war ended, surviving Luftwaffe pilots gathered at reunions, air shows, and historical conferences, gray-haired men who had once been young warriors fighting impossible battles in deteriorating circumstances. When conversations turned to aircraft, to tactics, to the machines they had flown and fought against, one aircraft always drew particular reflection: the P-51 Mustang. Major Klaus Hendel, who had flown the captured T9+HK during those summer demonstrations in 1944, spoke about it decades later with the careful precision of a man choosing words to convey difficult truth. We had never flown anything that handled like the Mustang. The control harmony, the power, the range. It was revelation and humiliation combined. We understood immediately why the air war had turned against us. Other pilots echoed similar sentiments. It could do everything better than our fighters, one former Bf-109 pilot admitted. Climb, dive, turn, accelerate. And it could do all of it for twice as long because of that incredible range. We were fighting an aircraft we could not match. The acknowledgments came without bitterness, just the professional respect of former adversaries, recognizing superior engineering and industrial capability. The captured Mustang had forced German pilots to confront a truth their propaganda had denied. American engineering was not crude, not unsophisticated, not inferior. It was, in many ways, superior. The P-51 represented integrated industrial warfare, sophisticated design executed through precision mass production, supported by limitless resources, fielded in overwhelming numbers. Germany had entered the war with technical advantages and skilled pilots, but America had built systems that rendered those advantages obsolete. One pilot summarized it simply: we fought with courage and skill, but they fought with excellent aircraft, endless fuel, and factories that never stopped producing. That was the war, and that was why we lost. The yellow Mustang disappeared from history, but its legacy endured in the memories of men who learned, too late, that underestimating American capabilities was a fatal mistake. The P-51 had been more than a fighter. It had been proof, undeniable, unforgettable, of the enemy they had underestimated.